Welcome to Healthcare Forward, where industry leaders, benefit advisors, and healthcare professionals come together and discuss the changing landscape of commercial health plans. Brought to you by Roundstone Insurance, the first group captive for health insurance, where smarter self-funding meets long-term savings. I'm Mike Schroeder, founder and president of Roundstone Insurance. I'm your host today, Mike Schroeder, founder and president of Roundstone Insurance, and I'm here today with an entrepreneurial leader with over 25 years experience in operations and consulting management. Our Chief Operating Officer at Roundstone Insurance, Beth Snyder. Welcome, Beth.
Thanks, Mike. Glad to be here.
Well, Beth, I think you're aware that we conducted a survey of middle market CFOs throughout the country. And in the feedback from that survey, we found out a couple things. First off, 85% of them felt that healthcare and their health plan was harming their financial impact and the profitability of their company. And almost half of them felt that the pressure to fix that problem was falling on them. So my question is, in that environment, what is the impact to the CFO?
Yes, well, it's actually a newer trend, right, for the CFO to be more involved in the healthcare decision making, right? Historically, this is something that lived with HR. And again, especially if you're talking to mid-market companies, right, 100 people, 80, 90, 100 people companies, there's an HR person who is a generalist who has responsibility for all, of the HR things that go on within a company. And they're very concerned with their constituents who are the employees. They're concerned with delivering the highest level of benefit and retaining employees, right? As benefits as an asset to how you retain an employees. So it's newer for the HR professional to have to work directly with the CFO and think more about the cost, right? When we think of financials, we often talk about cost benefit. In this case, it's the cost of the benefit, right, that they're putting more focus on than what has been put on in the past. So what that means is that for the HR professional, that they need to be much more educated. They need to bring solutions to the table. And to do that, they partner with a broker or an advisor, right? So that also means the brokers or advisors need to be more educated as well and really come to the table with solutions, not just, thinking about maintaining the benefit, but also controlling the cost. We actually recently, at the beginning of May, we every year have what we call our MCF, our symposium, where we bring together brokers and employers that are on different stages of their healthcare journey, their self-funding journey with Roundstone, and it's a very educational event. This year I had several sessions that were we put folks into kind of tracks, right? Beginners who are early in their self-funding journey, intermediate, kind of where are you in your journey? So I was with the beginners this time. And so you kind of got to know the people in the session. In this case, one of the people that really stood out to me was an HR professional who proactively found Roundstone via SHRM, right, which is a very common HR organization, had two peers that recommended Roundstone. And without a broker, without anyone telling him to, instructing him to do this, he spent 2 days, learning about self-funding with Roundstone because he felt like he wanted to be in the room. He wanted to have a seat at the table. And in order to do that, he needed to not only understand the benefits, he needed to understand the finances and be able to speak to the CFO. So, I think that's just a trend we're going to continue to see, that if you want to be in the room where it happens, you have to understand this and you have to be able to speak to it.
Well, kudos to that person for jumping in and spending the time to learn. That's fantastic. I want to talk about this acronym you hear thrown around sometimes called PEPY or PEPY, per employee per year. Can you share a little bit about what that is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, per employee per year. So when you think about how employers buy healthcare, right? And if you think about as they think about buying anything, they're thinking about a unit cost, right? And a unit cost of buying healthcare is how much it costs per individual employee per year. That's your overall spend. I think one of the folks think of healthcare with a capital H as very, big and complicated, and don't, think they can necessarily understand what goes into that cost. And PEPY is really a great metric that you can benchmark. There are benchmarks out there from Mercer, for example, that will tell employers this is on average what I should be paying per employee per year. And there's ways in which, you can create the apples to apples comparison between the different, models and buying decisions that you have. So it's a really powerful metric overall.
So we're big advocates at Roundstone of paying attention to your PEPY and knowing what it is and looking at it and measuring that in terms of accountability for how your health plan is being managed. How does that differ from maybe the historical approach to how folks looked at success and whether their health plan was doing well? Why is PEPY focus different than maybe what folks did in the past?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it really aligns with Roundstone's values as well around transparency, right? Which is one of the reasons why it's very important to us. Is we do believe you should deserve to understand what you're getting and how much you're paying. And it's a universal way of doing it. Like I said, it kind of levels the playing field. This one we actually, another little story here. This came to us through a question from an advisor or broker, right, who was looking to, and often when a broker is proposing a solution to an employer, they do what's called spreadsheeting, right? They take the different proposals and they try and shove them into a formula and look at them side by side. A broker actually came to us and said, hey, I'd like to look at this in a different way. I'd like to look at this in a PEPY, and I'd like to understand all the layers of what goes into the PEPY and do my comparison that way. And it made us really look internally and sit and think like, hey, we actually do have all this data and this is really powerful and we can peel back the layers of the onion and we can show where the spend is occurring. We can help you address the spend layer by layer. So that's how we went down that road. And, now what we're finding is that, it really does illuminate, whether someone's currently with fully insured or if they're on a self-insured, you really can, look across all the options in a way that is very transparent, right, to where your money is going.
Very different than a percentage increase. I had a good friend of mine tell me that he's doing real well with his health insurance because he had a 7% increase.
Yeah.
But that same person had no idea what that 7% was on. He could have been spending $20,000 an employee, and maybe that 7% wasn't all that great.
Right.
And then even in further discussion, we found out that a big reason he was getting the 7% was because he was increasing the deductible to a significant level for the employees. So that's where the whole, I guess, PPY is a much more objective, accurate. You might think you're winning with a 10% increase,
right?
But perhaps you're not if you're paying well above the benchmark for PPY. So
yeah, and that goes into kind of again what's broken, right, in the fully insured model, right? That folks feel kind of trapped in it. And again, as business leaders, we look at controlling the controllables. What are the things that we can control? And over time, even the most sophisticated leaders have been conditioned into believing they have to accept, an increase, right? They have to just accept that the baseline is what it is, and that every year what they're trying to do is, reduce the pain of the increase, not really consider the underlying costs and what they might be able to control by looking at it differently. It's a fully insured black box, right, without really having any insights into why you're getting the increase you're getting. And really it's, it starts high and then they get a competitive quote and they'll bring it down. And then the HR professional will go, phew, we dodged a bullet. It's not double digits. It's only 8%, right? Like they've been conditioned into just accepting that there isn't another way. And there is.
Yeah, I know. I've had conversations where, someone said, "Oh, I don't think I need to look at self-funding because I just got a 5% increase." And I know some of the folks say, "Well, that's why you should look into self-funding because if you're getting that kind of percentage increase, there's obviously a lot of savings to be had." And measuring success with a percentage increase at the end of the day, that's just not the way to go about it. Yeah.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about costs, and obviously the CFOs are concerned about it, but in the marketplace, my understanding is that these healthcare costs are, you hear quite often that they've doubled in the last 10 years. And so putting that in perspective, if today the average PEPY is $16,000, that means 10 years ago employers were paying $8,000. Yeah. Today they're paying 16. With Roundstone, we're able to reduce that for them. But I also saw where the consulting company McKinsey came out and said that this is having an impact on where folks find their benefit funding solutions. And the movement away from that fully insured model into self-funding is picking up some speed. And over the last several years, I was shocked, but it was millions of members, millions of employees have moved into a self-funding model like Roundstone's, and they're projecting in the article I read that could move to $4 to $5 million a year. And so what does the PEPY, how does that help in respect to this environment of just escalating costs? Is it just the measure, or is there something it can do to help us in managing these costs?
Yeah, that's a great point. And the same Mercer organization has said that this year alone the increase for small and medium sized businesses to expect is 9%, right? So it's not slowing down, and some factors that are continuing to accelerate it are obviously inflation and the world around us has an impact on it overall, right? The shortage of healthcare workers, the increase in behavioral health, the increase in drugs, right? So those are all factors that are driving healthcare. But like I said, a lot of times people who are consumers of healthcare and the leaders of the businesses who provide those benefits feel like they can't control it, right? But in the self-funding model, you actually can, right? The first step is the transparency and understanding it, right? In the fully insured model, you don't see any of your data. You don't understand what's contributing to your costs, whether it's a 5%, a 10%, or whether you're in range on your PEPY or not. You just simply aren't, an informed consumer, right, at some point. So the first step is really, again, identifying those different layers and looking at that to say, okay, where are my opportunities, or where are the things that are, looking at your population uniquely. It's not one size fits all, right? So, there could be a case where it's a pharmacy related solution that would really help drive that cost down further. It could be simply the network that you're with, right? The carrier that you're on, or things like that looking at your geographies and where your people are located and what's available in your markets that's driving those costs. So it really does put the control back, right, with the employer and through their advisor and through, working with Roundstone to understand those different pieces of the puzzle. That's how we get at what is the best solution for each individual employer.
Yeah, I think that's something I want to explore a little more. I guess the questions I have, is it if you're an employer and you run your math on your total spend divided by your members on the plan, and you find I'm at $16,000, or I'm at 18, or I heard the other day that there's some employers that are up at $25,000. Is there really something that can be done about that, or are they pretty much stuck there like they would be in the fully insured market? Can we have an impact and lower PEPY by $3,000 or $5,000?
Yeah, and I really went to how Roundstone helps each individual company solution, around it. But the first step is really self-funding through the captive overall, right? That inherently in and of itself, right? It kind of is a reset button, right? So you're not paying, you're paying for the risk that is at where you're coming into the captive versus what the fully insured carrier has built in over time. They will continue to build in more and more over time, whether that's really your utilization or not, right? So we're looking more at getting you to where you should be, right? Just by joining the captive model and just by understanding the levers within fully the self-funded model, right? So just moving to the model is an opportunity in and of itself, right?
To save significant dollars.
Significant dollars, yeah. And to your point, whether it's 1,000 or 5,000, right? If you're a 100-person company and you have 100 lives on your plan and you save $1,000 a life, that's $100,000 a year, right? And that's not 1 year, that's in perpetuity, that you're not incurring that cost. That so to me, a hundred, you tell a CFO of a 100-person company that we can save them $100,000, I would think they would want to listen, right? They'd want to be educated about it.
That makes them happy, you would think. Yeah. What do we do? And you touched on something. That's one of my favorite sayings. Is I know we have an advisor partner we work with that says you pay for what you deserve, and that's kind of what you're saying. Is you don't want to pay for what you don't deserve, and so our model basically does that. You pay for what your actual costs are, and I guess a couple of questions I have is, what can we do to moderate those costs? I mean, what strategies are there? I know there's the plan document. I know there's a pharmacy benefit manager, and there's this broad idea called cost containment. But if you could share with me what you see as really key strategies to manage those costs.
Yeah. I think the first thing overall is to really think about engagement, right? So there's engagement of the HR professional, the engagement of the CFO, each company and each contributor has a different risk tolerance. They have a different a level of engagement, right? That is going to be comfortable to them, right? So I think meeting the employer where they're at on that is the first step, is understanding where are you at in your journey, and how do you want to engage with this, right? Do you want it to be that it's really zero disruption, right? Zero disruption to my employers. That's my priority, right? Versus, no, we want to engage our employees. We want to fine tune our benefits for them. We want to, understand through the data what will better serve them and make those adjustments. To your point, the plan document is one way to do that, right? So, I think it's a very consultative approach to meet the employer where they're at, and use the data. That's the most important thing, to understand your population, and then target whether it's an individual, what you were calling cost containment solution. So maybe they have a high cost pharma user who could benefit from internationally sourcing a drug, or some other programs. Maybe they have concerns over diabetes, and there's programs that are geared towards serving that type of population. We have things that are more targeted towards folks who have concern with musculoskeletal. So different solutions that fit whatever the population's needs are, and they're not all the same. So again, it's really just looking at each individual layer and understanding, we do for all of our partners, extensive vetting, right? So whether it's the pharmacy benefits manager, the network, the third-party administrator partner, or these cost containment solutions, we are vetting and scorecarding to make sure that they're in alignment with the best interest of the employer. So, in Roundstone, you get a partner that has done that work, right? That really believes first and foremost in what's in the best interest for the employer, and looking at partners that also have that belief and that will also stand behind, their approach to delivering these things.
That word alignment, it's interesting because obviously we are doing some things different. The self-funded group captive was a unique funding concept that came about recently with our help. And then, you talked about how, hey, we don't think you should be looking at your percentage increases. We think PEPY is a different way, a better way. So, clearly Roundstone does things a little different. And I think this alignment effort and this focus on making sure the employer is partnered up with the right solution partners that are driving towards their outcome of managing these costs. Tell me why that's different than what maybe others see in the industry. And for Roundstone, what does success look like for us when you consider alignment?
Yeah, I think, again, putting the employer first and putting the employer front and center in the conversation is the most important thing. And as it relates to partners, and going back to our previous conversation about, why are folks so accepting of the status quo? It's because they've been conditioned to accept the status quo because that benefits others in the chain of participants in healthcare, right? So, whether that's taking an incentive, right? For example, taking a broker taking an incentive from a network for renewing, right, with that network, or a PBM, paying, an overlay, or things like that, right? There are places where those, the solutions may not be in alignment with what's in the interest of the employer. So I think that's what's really different about Roundstone is that, first of all, we don't participate in any of that, right? We don't take any incentives. We don't take any overlays or any payments of that nature from any partners. And we expect that of our partners as well, right? We expect transparency at every level, whether that's the fees that you're paying, that employers are paying for a filling a script, or a fee that they're paying for an administrative service. Like, we believe that should be transparent to the employer, and we'll help you get there. We'll help you see it, and we'll help you understand it, right? So that it takes some of the first of all, the heavy lifting, but also the some of the fears off the table as well.
Beth, we've been talking about the PEPY metric, and so I'm curious. Let's dig into a little bit about what are Roundstone's PEPY metric for all of our customers, and what is, again, I think we have mentioned the national benchmark, but let's get a little more detail on these benchmarks.
Overall, the Mercer study indicates that the per employee per year cost for employers in the mid-market, so 50 to 500, is around $16,400 a year. Our Roundstone book of business is just under $13,000 a year, and Bywater, our preferred bundle with our third-party administrator and PBM bundle, our preferred bundle is just under $11,000 a year. So again, just by adopting this model and just by going with Roundstone, there's a significant opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, if my math is right, that's a $3,000 savings for doing that, and then if you go with the preferred approach, the preferred bundle, that's another $2,000. So that's $5,000 per employee. So wow, that CFO just got a little happier, right?
Yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah, and we look at our data for all our 1,000+ customers to come up with those numbers, right?
Yes, exactly.
Well, obviously, interesting times in health insurance and healthcare, a lot going on, challenging market, but pretty clear to me that the idea of the per employee per year metric is something that's a game changer, and certainly can maybe open the opportunity for these employers to better manage their health plan. And so I just want to say thank you, Beth, for joining us and sharing your expertise.
Thanks again. It's great.
And if anybody wants to learn more about Roundstone, reach out. We have sales folks, we call them regional practice leaders, and they're available to talk to you and guide you in the right direction and next steps if that's something you want to explore. I hope you all take time and join us for our next podcast on Healthcare Forward, and that is Lauren Gliha, who's our Partner Solutions Manager, and I know you work with Lauren, and I'm sure she'll have some great ideas for us as well.